Hi, welcome to Talking TV. I'm Patrick Day. I write about TV for the Los Angeles Times, and I'm here with the Times TV critic Mary McNamara. And over the weekend, we got two new cable dramas premiered: The Knick on Cinemax and Outlander on Stars. Both taking place in the past, but very different in tone. I'm going to ask you right off the bat, Mary. You've got, you're sitting down. You've got both these shows on your DVR. Which one are you going to watch first?
Outlander.
Outlander for sure.
Yes, and it was quite surprising for me personally, because I thought it was all about the Knick. I mean, it's Steven Soderbergh, it's Clive Owen, it's period, doctor. It's like got all this medical stuff. It's set in what, 1900s New York, and so everything is just starting to change. It's a little Ripper Streety, but I was really like, that was going to be my show, and I thought. And Outlander looked like it was going to be just a bodice buster. It was like all going to be, romantic glances and, this time traveling love triangle. I just was like, that's too girly for me. And when I watched the two, my heart just went to Outlander. I love it. I love it. And the first episode, we were just talking about this. The first episode is very confusing because they have to set up a lot of logistics, which is that it's about a World War II Army nurse and her soldier husband reunite after the war.
1945.
1945. So we're already in a period, and then they go to the Scottish Highlands and chat about his ancestry, and then they go for a walk in the Scottish Highlands, and she sees a circle of standing stones, goes back to that circle of standing stones, and is miraculously transported through time back to 1748?
1743.
1743, thank you very much, to the time of the Highlanders, and is then captured by a clan of Scottish Highlanders, but not before meeting the dreaded redcoats that are oppressing the native people, who are led by... the ancestor of
great-great-grandfather who turns out to be a horrible, horrible person.
And played by the same actor.
Played by the same actor.
So it's a little confusing for her and very confusing for us. So it is a lot. It's a logistically complicated premiere. And I know people who have watched it goes, I don't know what's going on. I just say, hang tough. Just get through that, because then she stays in Scotland. They sent out 6, and I've seen 6. And she's in Scotland. And you do flashback to 1945, but the narrative action stays put in Scotland, and it's beautiful, and it's like, and it's things we've never seen, it's people we've never seen, it's wonderful Scottish actors we've never seen, and it's delightful.
We should point out this is based on a series of books.
Yes.
There's 8 books
internationally
by a woman named
best-selling
Diana
books.
Gabaldon.
Yes.
Extremely popular. It's part of the reason why people call this a Game of Thrones for women.
Yes,
because
exactly.
They're sort of fantasy, time travel, historical adventure books. But one of the interesting things one of the interesting decisions they've made is it seems like they've slowed down the pace of this show. Like, I've only seen the first episode, but one surprising thing for me is that a show about time travel, she doesn't actually travel back in time until over halfway through the first episode.
Right.
And do you find that pace continues throughout? You've seen the first 6 episodes.
It is. I mean, it is very. It's a very carefully paced, and I think that's one of the things that I like about it. It's very well paced, because there are certain things that have to happen, in any time travel. She has to establish what she's going to do. Is she going to tell anybody? She has to figure out, is there a way for me to get back? Is that going to be my goal? How am I going to survive in this? How am I going to pass as somebody who belongs in this time? And not only is she out of time, but she's British. And so she's like a Brit in Scotland at a time when Brits are not very popular in Scotland. But the reason, then you realize the reason that they, showed you her as an army nurse is that she's a healer, and so that is a way that she can prove herself of worth to her captors. Basically, she can stitch a wound. She's not afraid of setting a bone. She knows how to use certain medicines. You see her trying to deal, it made me think, okay, I need to read up on medicinal uses of certain plants, so if I ever go back in time, I can heal this person so that they won't kill me. And so you see her doing all that, and so you have that kind of business, but then you also have her getting to know the people and then there's a love interest, and so eventually it becomes kind of a time love triangle between a young man in Scotland, and then her husband, who she loves and who she is trying to get back to. So yeah, I think it's just really nicely paced, and they spend plenty of time just showing you the beauty of Scotland, you know, the incredible detail of the castle, of how they eat, of how they dress, of all of those things that people love so much.
I mean, in comparison to a lot of the dramas that are on TV right now, it's interesting. Do you think that the simplicity of the story, like as opposed to Game of Thrones, which a lot of people have compared it to, where the first episode you're thrown in and there's, you know, 80 characters and there's all these plots and plots within plots and you're trying to figure out what's going on. It's surprising that how sort of simple the narrative is for Outlander.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is, I mean, because you have one central character, and that's who you really care about. But then there are many plots around it. It's not just about her trying to get home. It's also, or not even about her falling in love with this young man. It's also kind of about, you know, she realizes basically she's in a time period where the Highland way of life, this is you know, a few years away from ending. That the British are going to eventually, you know, put down the clans. And so she comes to realize that what for her was a historical footnote, just something interesting to see while you're touring with your husband, it's like, oh my God, these people, their lives are going to be, you know, ended, many of them, changed utterly, you know, and then you also kind of see her as, you know, as a British person who has just spent, you know, years of her life protecting, you know, her army and fighting for her country and all this stuff, looking back at her country's own history and going, well, this is not, you know, exactly the coolest thing we've ever done, you know, and so that's kind of, you know, a nice, that lifts it a little bit. I mean, and then they don't hammer that home, but it gives it a nice context.
Right. Well, you know, looking back at the past, I mean, the other show that we're talking about this week is The Knick, which also premiered on Cinemax. And this comes with a high pedigree. It's Steven Soderbergh. He directed the 10 episodes. It's already been renewed for a second season.
Yes, yes.
Clive Owen plays a troubled doctor in New York City in 1900, working at the Knickerbocker Hotel. I'm sorry, Knickerbocker Hospital. Knickerbocker Hospital, yes. What was your impression of this show?
You know, I felt like I'd seen it before almost immediately. I mean, we open with Clive Owen plays, as you say, a troubled doctor. We see him immediately in a brothel, so you get your naked woman. He's an opium addict, so you get your addicted doctor. And then 5 seconds later, he's like operating, which, you know, I guess he's a cocaine addict, actually. And yet he's doing this like very intense operation in front of a theater of, you know, bearded doctors watching, and they're trying to figure out how to deliver a cesarean delivery of a what is it? Where the anyway?
It was a placenta
prevera.
Yeah.
And if they can do it fast enough to save both mother and child. And of course they fail. So my attitude is like, okay, 5 minutes in and we've got the naked woman and the dead woman. So that's pretty good, you know. But you know, at first I was thinking, well, why is this not on HBO? Because obviously Cinemax is the sister of HBO, and Cinemax to a certain extent has been very, you know, action oriented. It's been, you know, Spartacus. It's been Strike Back, and this is like their way of kind of putting could be a prestige awards drama on Cinemax as well. And I just felt like it was something that we've seen. We've seen this, you know, he's not as interesting as House. We've seen this area before. I mean, it reminded me very much of Ripper Street, just kind of like, which is a BBC kind of detective procedural set in Victorian London, but you also have an American pathologist who's like doing all this cutting and making all these deductions. I mean, the thing that makes The Knick interesting is the early medicine. I mean, you do have some really, you know, interesting things that happen where you just see, first of all, it makes you very grateful to live when we live right now, where you see how these things were developed, and then there's a side story about a black doctor who is brought into the hospital. Clive Owen's character wants nothing to do with him, and then he sets up kind of I guess, you know, like a basement infirmary for patients of color, and that's very interesting. But I don't know. You know, as much as I like, you know, it's beautiful and it's interesting, I just don't care about any of the characters too much. What did you think? Right.
You know, my brain told me it was good. It was well done. The production value was great. I agree with you. I think looking at the way that medicine was practiced in 1900 was fascinating / horrifying.
Right.
But you know, as a way to spend an hour TV, it seemed like there are so many dark, brutal dramas on TV right now that made me question whether I wanted to watch yet another in that long run.
I know, it was like it was strange to me that Soderbergh would come this way, because this character, you know, he's a classic anti-hero. I mean, he's Gregory House basically in you know 1900, and I was just like, I feel like that we're at the end of the arc with that guy for a while, and that we're moving on to like more classic heroes, we're moving on to more interesting women, we're moving on to just more interesting characters, you know, lead characters of color. It's like we're seeing, and that this is like kind of a step back. Well,
we should also point out that I think that they're taking this whole idea of the doctor as addict to an extreme. I mean, there's a scene in the first episode where Clive Owen, who's going through cocaine withdrawal, has to perform a emergency surgery and has to have his cocaine injected in a very delicate place.
Oh my God, that was just like, really? Are we doing this?
And once you've done that, I mean, where
do you go from there? I don't even want to talk about it. But the thing that also drove me crazy about that is like he goes from, you know, laying on the bed, he's shaking and all this stuff, and so this woman has to shoot him in the private parts, and then the next thing you know, he comes like blazing in, and he's like all, you know, it's like, okay, this is not the way drug addicts operate. They don't go from, you know, foaming at the mouth, you know, cringing, and then now suddenly they are capable of performing the most delicate surgery in the world. It's kind of like, well, we should all be taking cocaine then. If that's the way it works, you know, sign me up. But it's like, you know, that was kind of ridiculous.
Let me ask you about the music, because the music for both of these shows struck me. Soderbergh has made a decision with the Knick to put a very modern sort of synthesized score with it that's very propulsive and driving. Do you think that worked for the?
No, I didn't like it. I mean, again, I like Soderbergh. I know that he can be divisive as a director. Some people love him, some people don't like him, and I felt like this, you know, this was like kind of mild Soderbergh. Do you know what I mean? It's like he's definitely, I mean, it's television, so there are certain things that he has to do that he, you know, doesn't necessarily have to do in his films. I did not like that choice for the music. I found it very distracting. I though am getting to a point, and maybe it's because I'm getting old, but I feel like everything is being overly soundtracked these days. I felt that way as much as I love The Honorable Woman. I felt that was like, turn down the soundtrack. You know, it's like you don't have to underline every single thing that happens with music. We are capable as, you know, conscious human beings to experience emotion that is not directed audibly. You know, just let us, you know, experience what's happening instead of, you know, okay, now you're supposed to feel anxious. Now you're supposed to feel, you know, relieved. Now you're supposed to feel. But this, like, kind of that beat, it's like it's like Doctor Who music or something. It's so weird.
No, so, you know, one of the selling points of the Knick is that, you know, it's Soderbergh coming to TV, doing a TV series. You know, he's the latest in a growing list of film directors who are coming to TV. Guillermo del Toro with The Strain, Martin Scorsese with Boardwalk Empire. And do you think that all of these film directors, are they having an effect on the look and feel of TV, or are they just, I mean, is premium cable drama advancing well enough on its own that they don't need the name?
I mean, I think it's great to have, you know, these directors. I mean, Martin Scorsese, a lot of them do the pilots. That's what happened with Martin Scorsese. Did the first and maybe the second episode of Boardwalk Empire. David Fincher did the first 2 episodes of House of Cards. And this is, you know, this is the first, I guess, maybe, well, as you say, The Strain, where you have like these A-list film directors who are directing the whole shebang. Although I know he's not directing it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So Soderbergh is probably the first one then, where he's directing, and so in a way, I kind of like that he's doing the whole thing, because one thing that can happen when you have the directors come in for the pilot, and this happened with House of Cards, which is like you can never live up to those first 2. And I don't know whether that's necessarily the director, or it's just the fact that, you know, we are putting all of our money and all of our attention on these because we really want to get people hooked. And, you know, with House of Cards, it just never got back to that level. You know, Boardwalk Empire has been beautiful throughout, and so that really did kind of work as an imprimatur where Scorsese started it. I think that, you know, as more and more people from film come to TV, and I've talked to people who have worked in TV for a long time, and they sort of have very mixed feelings about it, because they're just like, you know, we don't need these people to tell us how to make good television. We can make good television on our own. But on the other hand, it's always good to have more creative minds. But I think that it's really important that the people from film realize that television is a different medium. It has different expectations and different needs. And character, which, you know, we were saying about the Knick, is the most important thing. Is that you have to create characters that people want to see week after week after week. It's not enough to just, you know, oh, well, for 2 hours we'll spend time with these people and we're going to also examine these themes and we're going to do this mood. You have to, your first point of, you know, of reference has got to be creating these really great, compelling characters. They don't have to be lovable, but they have to be compelling. We have to want to spend time with them. And I think that in the Knick, he hasn't done that yet. I'm like 4 episodes in, and I like the nun.
Right.
That's about it.
But then, and then conversely, in Outlander, this is a group of people that
I love them.
Yes, all
I
of
love them.
Yes.
Yes, even the ones I hated.
Right.
And like I wanted to see, and I liked her, even though she's like kind of that quintessential alabaster-skinned, you know, English woman, and she with her perfect curls and all this stuff. At first, I wanted to kind of hate her, but I like her, and I think that the actress does a really good job of like maintaining that. You know, you sort of see her kind of panicking, but holding herself together, because it's like it's not like she can say, oh, you know, no, I'm not a British spy, I'm from the future, because you know that's going to get you hung or hanged in that period. So. And it's also interesting to see a modern reaction to kind of the horror and the struggle of everyday life.
And we should point out that the Outlander has been adapted for TV by Ronald D. Moore, who used to write for Star Trek: The Next Generation, and is best known for, you know, relaunching Battlestar Galactica. But I think it's interesting that for a show about time travel, the time travel aspect of it is, I feel, downplayed to the degree that they don't go through a whole rigmarole to explain how she got back in time. It just sort of happens.
Well, that's because she goes by herself, so she doesn't really have anybody to talk to about it. Like, what do you think? You know, it's just, and it's so strange what happens. And what Outlander does have is, and they use it very well. They have a very extensive voiceover that at first I thought was going to be a problem, because it seemed like, oh, we're just going to use the voiceover to explain, you know, what she's feeling and thinking. But so far, it's really worked out. But it sort of provides the connective tissue, because she doesn't have a friend yet that she's confided in, and I don't know if she ever will. There is some reference further in, like I think like the 4th episode, there's a song about a woman who does travel through time that she hears, and that's kind of interesting, because then you wonder, was this about her, and is she going to, you know, travel further back? You know what I mean? Has this happened before? So I mean, there are
before, and it will happen again.
Exactly, like it's timey-wimey, and so, you know. But I think that it's more just kind of immersing yourself in this culture, you know, that we've never seen before, the Highland culture. That, you know, you just sort of feel like, I mean, outside of you know Rob Roy with Liam Neeson, that's what I kept thinking about rather than Braveheart. But it's like, you know, those are the only 2 times where we've spent really any time in Highland, Scotland, and it's very beautiful and very fascinating.
Have you booked your flight to Inverness yet?
But you know what, I tweeted that, because as soon as I started watching this, I'm like going, oh my God, the fares to Scotland are going to go sky high, and you're going to have the tours, and you're going to have, like, this is going to be a whole, you know, literally a cottage industry of people going back, because I totally want it. That's the first thing I wanted to do was let's go.
Yeah, it's great. It looks amazing. It's produced. It should be produced by the Scottish Tourism Board.
It should be. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Great. Well, Mary, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. You can get the rest of our TV coverage at latimes.com/showtracker.